I really think it comes down to like, what's the truth behind corporate America? You're going to be anxious. You're going to cry. Like, I never saw myself crying as a former football player, but I have cried because of what people have said to me.
Welcome to Culture Court, a podcast about the people and the ideas that drive our culture forward. Please like, subscribe, and send this to somebody that you think would enjoy this episode. Thank you for listening. Here we go. My guest today is one of the smartest and funniest people on TikTok. He blends humor with good advice for Gen Z and millennials who are in corporate America. He's worked at some of the biggest companies in the world, and he's been featured on Business Insider, BBC, and Fortune magazine. He has created the Young Professionals Conference, a one-day virtual experience where you can learn from young executives who work at places like Amazon, Deloitte, and the NBA. Please welcome my guest, Chase Coleman. Chase, thanks for being with us.
Man, that was the best intro I've ever had. You know what? I got to steal that from you because that was beautiful. And you have a podcast voice, man. Damn, I'm just excited to be here, y'all. Whoever's listening, thank you for tuning into this episode. CJ's an awesome host, awesome person. I mean, I would also argue that you're probably one of the smartest, if not funniest people on TikTok too. So for you to be saying that about me, man, I appreciate it big time. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, no, man, thank you for being here. Listen, you got to get a good intro for people to get the pop. You know what I mean?
Oh, I trust me. I get it.
No, and it's warranted for you. So I think about you all the time as somebody who has done a lot of interesting things like early on. So when you're out, whether you're at a bar or dinner or family events, and someone is talking to you about school and work, and they ask you, what did you do to get here? Like, what did you do to get to where you are? What do you say?
That's a great question. I tell them that I have no fear. And it's actually a lie because I have a lot of fear. And I fear failure all the time. But I also look at failure as an opportunity to learn. You know, I'm 29 years old. I believe that we don't really reach our peak until whatever that your vision of success looks like, right? And I have two things that I always keep in the back of my mind. One thing is Matthew McConaughey, and he was talking about what he looks forward to, what he has in the present, and then he said something else. I'm going to butcher it so bad. But he always said that the person that he's chasing is himself in 10 years. And he said he's never going to get there. He's never going to be that role model that he wants to be in 10 years, but it gives him something to always chase, right? Wow. The other thing that's always in my mind is that every experience that you go through in life, whether it's a win, whether you consider it a loss, is always a learning, and you can always build upon that. And I have a variety of interests. And I think one thing that I lost graduating college, going into corporate America, was I was no longer an athlete. And most athletes, that is their identity. My identity was I was a football player. You know, I was disciplined. Everything around a football player that you would think of was what I embodied. And then I had to find myself. I was like, what do I like? What do I want to do? What do I want to accomplish? And I couldn't figure that out. So I decided to, start a blog. I started podcasting. I started realizing that I was really passionate about helping others. And that kind of brought me on this journey to starting a blog that failed, starting a podcast that failed, turning into another podcast that failed, and then turning all of a sudden into short form content to reach my audience. And, one of my uncles is an executive, and he used to be the CEO of Sweet Greens. He was an executive at Starbucks as well. He's done a lot in his life. And I look at him as someone who I'm like, dang, I would love to be you, like you'd be like the pinnacle of who I'd like to reach, like the things that you've accomplished. And when I talk to him, whether it's over a dinner or over a coffee, he always says, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. I still don't know what I want to do next.
Got it. So you're saying this person who's done a lot, they're still trying to figure out what they want to do and how they want to go about their next move. The person who is very accomplished is still trying to figure it out.
Exactly. I mean, look at Elon Musk, right? One of the most storied characters of a business leader that you could find, right? He has outrageous takes. He's bought Twitter, right? Tesla's doing just fine. Bought Twitter, started SpaceX, done all these things. And I bet if you and I were to sit down with him over a dinner and had a very real conversation with him, outside of his Elon isms, he would probably say, I'm still trying to figure it out too. Right. Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be. What do I want to be when I grow up? I hear from people who are in their 50s and 60s all the time, Chase, I want to be you when I grow up. And I laugh at them, but I think they're very genuine. And they're saying that because life is a journey. we're always trying to reinvent ourselves. We're always trying to figure out what's going to bring us to that next level of happiness. And for me, the journey is the fun part of it. You know, being able to lay down at night and close my eyes and look back on all the things that I've learned and all the things that I've been able to do and accomplish and go, you know, life really is a lot of fun. Like, it's all about the journey. It's not the end. It's not the end goal. It's not the thing that you reach at the end, right? It's always going to be about like, what did you accomplish on that journey, and what did you learn on that journey? And for me, it's been a mental battle of getting over my own anxiety, getting over my own imposter syndrome, getting over my own mental hurdles to becoming this person that I want to be. And at the end of the day, like, I just want to be the most well-rounded person, business professional that I could be, that also gives back and helps others. Because frankly, I graduated college with a 2.7 GPA. I never should have started at a company like Starbucks, but it was my mentors, it was my friends' parents, it was my parents, it was my brother and sister, it was my friends, it was everybody around me who helped me realize, one, I deserve to be here. Two, I can go after a position like this. And three, if I get the job, I'm going to kill it. And I owe it to them, and I owe it to the people, you know, quote unquote, behind me, AKA the younger generation, to be able to pay it forward. Because my mom used to always say it takes a village, and I'm a firm believer in that. And I always try to do whatever I can to help people.
So there's a few things in there that I think we need to unpack. The first thing is that we hear all the time about how life and a career are more like a jungle gym than a ladder, right? Mm-hmm. So you can like get on and off and go up and down and all this stuff. But it's hard to have that perspective when you're our age. You know, you and I are similar ages. How do you have that perspective right now? Like, what led you to that?
What led me to that was my first job at Starbucks. Well, I'll back up even farther a little bit. When I was playing basketball growing up, actually, I was a highly touted basketball player in elementary and middle school. I was ranked as high as number 7 in the state of Georgia. I thought I was going D1. You know, I'm 14 years old. I'm going D1. I'm good. When I got to high school, my high school had a bunch of transfers come in. And I played varsity as a freshman, but I sat the bench and I rode that bench so hard there were splinters up my ass. And it was a humbling experience because these guys were only a year older than me. You know, they weren't seniors, they weren't juniors. There was my foresight was I got to either beat them out or I got to wait till I'm a senior to even get a chance to play, you know, to get on the court. I worked, realized my role within the team was that I was going to be the guy who takes a bunch of charges, things that nobody wants to do, be the guy that's diving on the floor, things that nobody wants to do. And I'm going to knock down these threes. I may be 5'8", but I'm going to stand as far back as I possibly can and knock these down. But it also got me into football, got me a lot more into football, realizing that a 5'8" athlete in football has a better chance at playing Division I sports, right? My goal going into that was to be a Division I athlete, to have a scholarship. As I was going along my basketball journey, I realized that I wasn't going to ever be 6'4". I realized I was never going to be a McDonald's All-American like the guy playing in front of me. I realized I wasn't probably going to go high Division I like all the guys in front of me. You know, I would show out in front of the 20 college basketball coaches that were there, and they'd still only go talk to those 5 guys, right? And it made me realize at that moment intrinsically, right? I wasn't thinking about it, but like, it's okay to pivot. It's okay to reinvent yourself. I was always Chase the basketball player. Now I'm Chase the football player. You know, and I took football very seriously and was fortunate enough to land a scholarship at Stetson University, small D1 school in Florida. Fast forward, go through those 4 years, completely forget that, you know, that learning. And then I get my first job at Starbucks, and I thought that I was going to get promoted within the first year. Like, I was putting in the work. I was getting into work every day at 7 a.m. I was leaving around 7 p.m. I was working my ass off. And it was my first performance review that made me realize, like, maybe this isn't as linear as I thought it would be. Walked in, didn't prepare at all, thought that it was just a performance review, didn't know exactly how these ran. It was my first one in corporate America. And my manager decides to list off all of these different things that I was missing to get that promotion. Wow. And I remember talking to her and being like, how come you never brought these things up before? And mind you, I'm on the verge of tears, right? Like, this is something that, like, I took very personal. I'm here before you. I leave after you. Trump was elected as president. You and the rest of the business decided to take the day off. I was operating the business by myself. I've done a lot of things that I think prove that I need to be promoted. Why am I not getting this promotion? And she continued to just reiterate the same things that she had told me. And she was like, if you work on these, maybe the next, you know, 12 months will be better for you. It's very rare that somebody gets promoted within a year. And then all of a sudden, the facade of corporate America that I had dissipated very quickly. Now, I won't lie to you. I went home, I cried, called my mentors, called my parents, called everybody, and was like, this is awful. Like, she sucks, blah, 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 blah. Blamed her for everything. But one thing that I've learned in life is that, like, you could blame other people for stuff, but like, you got to take the bull by the horns. Like, no one's going to actually drive your career for you. No one's going to get you a scholarship. No one's going to make you the next CEO, right? I thought because my uncle worked in the business that it was like bang, 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 and that I was just going to move up the ladder. After that, they closed down my business unit at Starbucks. So I was only working there for about 9 months. My performance review was about like month 7. And I had to find a new job. And I found that I got promoted through that new job. Now,
Wow.
I was fortunate to be on like the skeleton team, help kind of close the business down. I was one of 30 people out of 400 that ended up staying. And I was like, wait, I got promoted out of like one of the worst situations that ever happened. You know what I mean? Like, in the storm, you could still find light. And I quickly realized at that moment that maybe I don't need to stay in the same business unit or in the same company to get promoted. And I moved over into the CPG portion of the business, was trying out something brand new, got like a 15% pay increase, brand new title, moved from a specialist to an associate. I'm feeling good. And then 9 months into that job, we got sold to Nestle. And I was like, what is wrong with me, right? Am I the problem? It's like that TikTok sound. Am I the problem? No, I'm the problem. And I was like, what is going on? And after that, like, went over to Nestle, realized all the opportunities that Nestle had, much bigger opportunity than Starbucks. I could have moved to DC. I could have moved to, at the time, Glendale. I could have moved to Ohio, like a bunch of different places around the country. Oh, yeah. And I started realizing there's a lot of things that I want to do in my career outside of just getting promoted. Do I always want to get paid more every year? Absolutely. But I also want new experiences. I want to be able to travel on the company. I want to be able to, get my Sky Miles and hotel miles from the company. I want to be able to work in a sales position. I want to be able to build skill sets. And I had one mentor tell me that your career is not about how fast you can rise, but it's about how well-rounded as a business leader you can become, and then have the leaders pull you up. Because the last thing that you want to be, Chase, CJ, is a vice president at a Fortune 100 company, and you don't know shit. The people who are reporting into you are looking at you like you're the biggest idiot in the world. And I've worked for leaders like that. And I remember the thoughts that I had and the conversations that I had around that leader and how unintelligent we all believed him or her to be. I didn't want to be that. So I started taking on a new way of thinking in terms of how I thought about my career. What skills can I build? What do I need in order to become that next leader that's going to make me a kick-ass leader? Right? I'm still not in people management, but I've built out different mentor programs, different things. I've taken on different mentees to be able to learn how to become a good people leader. I take a lot of notes on things that people do well, things that people don't do well. So that way I can incorporate it into my life and the way that I approach management, the way that I approach just working in general. And, I'd say I gave you a long-winded way of telling you how I kind of got into this thinking, but those two experiences alone really stick out in my life as something that just made me realize it's not about how fast I get up to being a VP. Like, I did have a goal when I was first joining corporate America, was that like I wanted to be like a 35-year-old VP or 30-year-old VP. And what I've realized is, like, as long as I'm increasing my salary, as long as I'm learning, and as long as I'm helping others along my journey, like, that day will come. It's just a matter of me finding the right position, the right place, and being behind the right leaders to be able to actually like thrive in that environment and grow.
Right. And you don't want to get there and not have the skills, because exposure just gets you exposed, right? Mm-hmm. Exposure just gets you exposed. So if you think about the fact that, one, at different companies, VP means different things, right?
1,000%.
And over the last 40 years, there's been a study done where I think it's at like the middle manager position has expanded so much that everybody that you think about in corporate America is like a middle manager or a VP, right? Like, at some companies, that means like there's 4 people that are VPs. At other companies, that's 400 people, right? You just don't know what that means when you see it on the resume. And Absolutely. What you want to do is have the greatest impact and use your skills.
Exactly. I don't want to be that leader that goes home complaining to my wife, being like, well, I don't have a wife now, but hopefully near future, being like, dang, this sucks. This
Right.
sucks. I want to be that leader that's going home going, my team is working on this and we are going to kill it and we are going to be the best. You know what I mean? Like, I want to show up excited every day. And I feel like when you're on your heels, right? A lot of us feel this when we first start a new job. You're always on your heels. You don't know as much as everybody else in the company. You're battling your own internal imposter syndrome. You are just a lot more anxious just in general, right? You feel like you're on your heels. And then all of a sudden you get to month 6 and you're like, I'm fucking killing it. I am the best analyst. I am the best account manager. I am the best X that I could be. And I'm going to keep doing this. Right. And then you start expanding on that. And that's what I want to be as a leader moving forward. But, you know, it's a journey. I'll get there when I get there. It's not on my time. It's on God's timing. And having a strong faith in a higher being, whether you believe in God or, you know, the universe or whatever it may be. I'm not someone to push religion on others, but I am someone to say you have to have a strong faith and foundation in something to be able to go back on, you know, like we said earlier, in the storm, you find the light. And it's like that faith in God for me, at least, has allowed me to be able to say, I'm going to say a prayer tonight, leave it up to God. He's got a plan for me and I'm just going to let him run with it. And I'm just here along for the journey. And I'm going to live his word and his light through my body and through my spirit. But at the same time, I'm going to keep pushing on. Does it make it easier every day? No, but it is a good foresight for me to stay grounded at least.
That's right. That's right. And so after a few years of kind of working through this journey, you get to a place where you're ready to share your experience and your take on corporate America. How did you kind of get to TikTok and Instagram, and what made you want to post corporate humor, but also like real deal corporate advice that people that are, you know, our age and a little bit younger can take away from it?
Totally. So when I first started at Starbucks, I actually started a blog called It's Millennial Talk, and I wanted to talk about things I didn't learn in college that you learn through corporate America. And what I realized is that I'm too young to be talking about this. I'm way too young to be talking about this, right? People who are 20, 21, 22, like they don't want to be listening to another 22-year-old who's only been here for a couple months. Like,
that's right.
Shit, I lost my first job. I could have ended up not at Starbucks anymore and working for a smaller brand, right? And that could have been everything out the window at that point.
That's right.
So it started with that. I went into a podcast platform, moving that over to called The Millennial Way. And still wasn't growing an audience. I was still like 24, 25, right? And realized that my podcast where I was talking more about like being a black man in corporate America actually did a lot better than the ones that I was talking about, like different jobs and how to break into certain industries and things like that. 2020 was a very big year for me, right? We had George Floyd happen. Well, first we had COVID, sent us all home, then George Floyd, and then you have protests and a bunch of other stuff that was going on within the country. I started like posting on my podcast more like personal things like that. And it got me more used to just being myself, you know, like I was still myself through my podcast and through my blog, but it was very professional. It was very much a host aspect of it. So I wasn't talking about me, I was talking about others. And my roommates, Alex and Thomas, I owe them a huge shout out because they used to sit on the couch every night. They would not say a word for about 45 minutes and they just scrolled through TikTok. And I was like, man, how do you guys spend so much time on TikTok? And they'd be showing me stuff. And then they started showing me different like corporate humor creators. And they were like, you could easily do this, right? You could make a riff off of trending sounds. You could do your own skits. Like, why aren't you doing this, Chase? And I was like, well, you know, I haven't podcasted for a while. Excuse me. I've been taking a little bit of a break. I have a bunch of free time on my hands. Let's give it a go. And I started doing some research on TikTok, seeing what other corporate humor creators were doing. And to be frank, I wasn't even looking at like corporate advice or career advice or tips or anything like that because I was so stuck on the funny part of it. And I thought, and frankly, as a consumer of the content, I was like, this is what I like to see. So this is what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. And sat on drafts. I had about like 8 to 10 drafts and I sat on it for about 10 days. And then one morning I woke up and I was like, and you could probably relate to this, CJ. I was like, F it. I'm just going to send it, bro. Like what's holding me back? Right. Like afraid that colleagues are going to see it. Like they already know that I create content in other formats, right? Like what else, what's the worst that could happen? And, I ended up posting it. And then I think after just a couple days, I had a post go viral. And I remember sitting down in my living room. It was like 4:15 that I had realized that there was like 100,000 views on it. And my roommates were both at a Mariners game. And this was like a big, I don't know what was going on in baseball. I don't watch baseball, but like some big game for them. And I'm texting Thomas and I'm like, dude, 100,000 views. Holy crap. like refreshed it, 150,000 views. Holy crap, it's at 200,000 views. What do I do? And he was like, bro, we'll be home in 20 minutes. We're leaving the game now. So they all popped beers. They were all excited as crap, wanted to celebrate. They get home. I'm sitting on my couch and I'm like, what do I do? How do I respond to all these comments? How do I talk to all these people? What do I keep creating? Like, when do I post? Do I let it breathe? Do I post tomorrow? Do I post another one tonight? What's going on? And they were like, bro, relax. Like, first off, like, this is big. This is your first time ever going viral. Like, congratulations. Let's pop a beer open. And I was like, all right, fine. We'll pop a beer open. After that beer, settled down a little bit. And they're like, get back to doing what you were doing, bro. Like, and stop looking at it so much. You know, it's really, really cool. But like, continue to build on that momentum. And I did. And then there's another pivot that happened, right? So at the time I was the millennial way. 6 months after that, I pivoted over and rebranded to the corporate chase, made it more personal to myself. And then when I moved to LA, actually, I met this awesome woman who I'm now dating, been dating for about 7 months now. And we had a long conversation, and she was like, what is your goal with content? Like, what do you want to do with this? Are you just having fun, or do you actually want to turn this into like a career or something? And I started telling her, like, I want to be a host, but I want to be a host for like corporations. I've hosted, Nestle's Sales Summit, had tens of thousands of people there. I enjoy being behind a microphone. I enjoy being in front of people. I enjoy, doing these things. And she was like, well, if someone were to view your content today, like, they don't even really know your voice. Like, how would they know that you wanted to do that? And I was like, well, you're right. And I had all these thoughts in my head about how I wanted to roll out these career development tools and how I wanted to roll out the conference and how I really wanted to help bring young professionals and amplify them and enhance their lives and their careers. So that conversation wasn't necessarily an easy one for me, right? It was a very humbling conversation.
Right.
And the next morning, I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, well, what do I do? Right? Like, how do I do this? So then it became the research aspect again. Go look at what other content creators are doing within the career space that are really thriving within the career tips and advice aspect of TikTok and Instagram. And start creating content. I took a couple weeks off, really wanted to ground myself, come to. And after doing so, I realized that I can do this type of content. It takes a lot more time and effort because it's more thoughtful. It's not creating what I like to call like short form video memes, essentially, because that's what trending sounds and things like that are. But it took more research for me to do. It took things for me to plan out more. It took for me to want to have to do it.
Yep.
And it was a journey the first couple months, seeing low views, 100 views, 1,000 views, 500 views, no shares, no saves, no favorites, no nothing. And I was like, fudge, what am I doing? What am I doing? This sucks. I used to go from, on average 10,000 views to like cutting that to a 10th. But more conversations with my girlfriend, more conversations with my parents, more conversations with God, and realizing like, it doesn't matter what the views are. It matters that I'm reaching the right people, that I'm helping the right people. Like, what is that end goal? Right. And, I'm proud to say that like my following on Instagram has grown tremendously because of the corporate content or the corporate and career like advice content, but also those people like to see the humor too. And my Instagram, it's stalled a little bit, but not my Instagram, my TikTok is stalled a little bit, but that's okay because now I'm reaching the right people. And it's got me some great opportunities, to be able to host, to be able to go do keynote speeches. Like I did a keynote at Stetson University, which is my alma mater, a couple months ago. And I never would have had that opportunity if I didn't start putting my voice out there and taking myself more seriously. So I would say it was like a journey of what I wanted to do. First and foremost, of like helping others, right? That's what kind of the key theme today. Right. But the other aspect of it too was like, like I said earlier, it takes a village, like having that real honest conversation with others to figure out, yeah, Chase, this corporate humor stuff is working. It's helping you grow, but like, is it really truly have an end game to it? And really, really realizing that like I wasn't on that path. I learned how to grow an audience. I learned how to talk to people. I learned how to engage with people. But the biggest thing truly was, what do you want to accomplish?
Yeah.
Right. If it's being a keynote speaker and hosting and potentially having a TEDx one day or a TED Talk, you have to make a pivot. And it's been a mental journey, right? Always is, always will be. But I love it. And I'm very proud of where I'm able to come to. But I still mix in the corporate humor because, frankly, we all need to laugh every once in a while.
That's right. I mean, that whole journey you just described, I'm with you 100% on that. The first time I had something hit 1 million views, it felt so big, like in my life personally, but nothing else changed. You know what I mean? And I gained, a lot of followers from that one video, but it wasn't like I didn't quit my job. I didn't get any money from it. You know what I mean? Like people that don't know about TikTok requires you to have gone viral a few times before you can even apply to get any of the creator funds that they set aside.
Yep.
And I just,
And the funds are small too.
And the funds are like $2. You
get $40 every million views. It's like, thanks for lunch,
That's exactly right. So I track with that the entire way. So you mentioned helping others being the central focus and kind of doing the slow growth mode with your career in real life, but also on the internet life. Mm-hmm. How did you have this idea for the Young Professionals Conference?
This has always been my dream, frankly. It's always been my dream. When I started the Millennial Way podcast, the goal was to talk to other young professionals to help students, even other young professionals, understand how to break into a company like a Starbucks, how to break into a company like an Amazon, what jobs are there at Amazon, right? Or within tech. I remember one of the speakers at the conference, Melanie Stewart, good friend of mine from college. She played lacrosse. I played football. We were always right next to each other. She worked at Google and then went from Google to Amazon, and we're colleagues now. But I would interview her and talk about, like, you work in sales at Google? Like, I didn't even know that sales was a thing at Google. Like, what do you mean? Tell me more. How did you understand that this was a job there? How did you get recruited there? How did you get there, right? And when I was kind of closing off the podcast, and I would say, like, it's not really closed right now. Like, I could still get up and record an interview tomorrow and post it. But I started doing roundtables with people. And this is when we were talking about George Floyd, helping amplify, like, Black voices, and also providing solutions to corporations and leaders and young professionals to help them understand, like, what would me, a Black man within corporate America, want from my company, right? Now, I can only speak for myself and those who I had on the roundtable, but we had great conversations. I always thought that, like, a bigger event would have been better than just a podcast, but I didn't know how to make it, how to go about it, like, what was I going to do? And frankly, this came up last December. My dad and I were talking. My dad coaches Division III basketball on the side. That's like his little side hustle. And I was like, man, like, I've grown a following now. Like, I've, done the Millennial Way podcast. Like, I've always wanted to highlight how students and young professionals can get these jobs and create almost like a hack, because the way I got my job was networking. Like, if I didn't have a network, like, then I never would have been able to get into this position. And he was like, well, why don't we do a conference? And I was like, well, I want to do a conference. That's what I want to do. And he was like, well, then why aren't we doing it now? And I was like, well,
yeah, that's right.
I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. And he was like, well, you're either going to do this with me or I'm going to do it. And that's going to be that. So it's either going to be your idea or it's going to be your event. And that applied pressure to me, pressure that I didn't know I needed. If my dad never would have told me that, I still wouldn't be running this conference. It'd still just be an idea that sits in the back of my head. And then I'd see somebody else go do it and I'd be pissed. Damn, that was my idea. Damn, I could have been doing this. Damn, I should be hosting that, right? Instead, I made myself the host. I tapped into my network of friends and people who I've been able to meet all under the age of 35. Like, CJ, you're going to be a guest at our next one. It was a dream that I always had, but I never knew how to make that dream a reality. And even if I only get 15 people to come to this first conference, it's still helping 15 people that I wasn't able to help initially, right? So it was always a dream. It was always something that I wanted to do, but it took for my father to turn that dream into a reality and to put some pressure on me behind it to make me realize, let's run with this shit. And now that's what we're doing.
I'm glad he did that, man. People need this kinds of stuff. And I think about this all the time. Like, I didn't even know, I'm a lawyer. I didn't even know what lawyers really did, right? I knew people on TV that were lawyers. I had no idea in real life what they did. And so this kind of stuff that you're doing is really needed for everybody. I got to ask, where do you think the common career advice falls short? Or do you think there just isn't enough of it generally?
I think at the end of the day, it really comes with, like, what do you want to do as a professional, as a student, right? When I was graduating college, I knew I wanted to work in marketing because I got my degree in marketing. It was the only thing I was good at in business classes. I changed my major 7 times. 7 times. I started out as a pre-med student. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I tried 5 different disciplines in the business school. Finally landed on marketing. Finally knew that it was what I wanted to do. However, when I got to Starbucks, I didn't know that there was 19 different divisions in marketing, right? Now, I don't know if there's actually 19, but there was a lot going on. You had integrated marketing, you had email marketing, you have social media marketing, you have promotional marketing, you have in-store marketing, it goes down the list. And I was like, damn. I was like, I'm just doing one part of marketing, but there's so many different aspects to it. And I don't think, I mean, I actually know that colleges don't do a good job of helping you understand that there's so many different aspects to it. But what I think falls short within like just like the content aspect of it is like, what different jobs are there within marketing? What different jobs are there within finance, right? You could be working directly for the CFO, or you could be working for like brand finance or sales finance. Like there's so many different aspects to it. And what I would like to kind of bring to the forefront is the fact that like there's so many different aspects of it that you might only like one aspect, right? I have friends in finance who've done, corporate FP&A, which essentially is working on like high level metrics for their CFO, and they hated it. But they worked in like product finance where they're helping figure out like the profit and loss statement, the P&L for a specific product or brand, and they love it because they get to feel like they're a part of the product, right? Some people might like that corporate FP&A position more because they feel more, I don't know, I'm going to make it up, excited because they're like, I'm working directly with the CFO. This is great visibility for me, X, Y, and Z. So what I'd like to do is bring to the forefront, one, like there's very general things about resumes and building a LinkedIn and, cover letters and things like that we could all use help on, maybe using Chat GPT to help upgrade our resume. Awesome. The things that really go viral within that space on TikTok and Instagram. But what I want to do is really help push forward the narrative that there's a lot of different aspects of marketing. There's a lot of different aspects of, sales. There's a lot of different aspects of everything. And you may not think that you're a salesperson. I did not ever want to work in sales, but you know what I love? Sales support. I love being an account manager. I love being an internal consultant for my sales teams. I loved helping figure out their strategy and how they were going to sell it, going to different, meetings where they're meeting directly with the person who's going to be buying it and realizing I can be that additional support that they bring in, and I can be that one subject matter expert, come in, boom, mic drop, leave, and then they find out that they made the sale, right? So I really think that it falls short in the aspect of like helping students find jobs that like they're going to enjoy. And I'd say the last thing is just transparency. I think that's something we see that's lacking in all of corporate America. Like I think leaders are not transparent with their employees, rightfully so, sometimes, especially in publicly traded companies. But from my perspective, I really think it comes down to like, what's the truth behind corporate America? You're going to be anxious. You're going to cry. Like I never saw myself crying as a former football player, but I have cried because of what people have said to me. I was always like, you're never going to hurt my feelings. My coaches used to yell at me at 5 a.m. They used to hit me on the front of my helmet and my face mask and tell me I was stupid, tell me I was unathletic, tell me I wasn't fast enough, tell me I wasn't big enough, wasn't strong enough, but I still was able to push through. It's a different exercise when you're going through and someone's critiquing you mentally rather than physically. And right. I just want to help others understand, like, it's not all roses and dandelions over on this side, but you could find joy in it. And you could still work on things outside of your 9 to 5 that are going to help build skills and help you become that person you want to be in the future. And I think a lot of us think about like, and we were talking about this before, a specific job or a specific role being that like pinnacle of where I wanted to reach. But instead of that thinking, it's now more, who do I want to be when I'm 20, who do I want to be 20 years from now? Who do I want my kids to look at me as? Who do I want the guys and girls that I mentor to look at me as? And where do I want to be? Do I know if that's going to be like a corporate CEO or something like that? I don't know, but I know that it's a people manager that has a team that loves him. I would be excited to work for myself if I were on my team, like, forward thinking, ideally, I would say. And then the last thing is just like the fact that like, that's just who I want to be as a person. And I had to stop thinking about like my career and reaching a certain goal as like that pinnacle. Cause what happens if I become a Fortune 500 CEO? Then I just sit and rest on my laurels and go, cool, I made it. I'm done. Like that's not the end game. So I think a lot of us think of just like a specific place or role to be that milestone and be like, oh, I've reached success. People think I've reached success already. I don't think I'll ever reach success, but I'll always be chasing it. And I just don't want to be that person that like reaches one goal and then goes, okay, cool, I'm done. You know?
That's great. That's great. One of the big things in this conference is that you're going to expose young students, young professionals to other, high functioning young professionals. Why is networking in conferences like this? Why are they important?
Your network is your net worth. And, we could throw out stupid sayings all day that mean a lot to you and I, but it's not going to mean anything to a 20-year-old. Networking is legitimately how I got my first job. I was at my buddy's wedding last weekend, guys that I played football with in college, and I told one of my friends, there's a moment that stuck out in my head, and it still sticks with me to this day, 10 years later. Actually, yeah, it was 10 years later. He told me that I was going to be a business professional that a lot of people were going to look up to based off of one conversation he heard me have with a recruiter from L'Oreal, and they were flying me out to New York. And that gave me the confidence to say, like, I could do this, right? But what he hadn't seen was all the conversations I had in my room with my friends' dads, my uncles, my parents, my close friends from back home saying, how do I get a job in these companies, man? Like, I'm applying, they're turning me down. I have a 2.7 GPA. It is not anything that's like worthwhile, right? Like, I've done a lot of things on campus. I was a Division I athlete. I think I deserve to be there. How do I do this? And every single one of them was like, you need to find somebody within that company that's going to help bring you in there. They're going to have to pull you in, because entry-level positions, it's not about what you've accomplished. It's not about how skillful you are. You don't have any real skills in corporate America. We're going to teach you everything that you need to learn, but you need to find someone who's going to believe in you. So I spent hours and hours and hours on LinkedIn, sending a lot of cold messages to people, finding people within. I wanted to work at Starbucks. I was a barista. I knew I wanted to work in a corporate office. I had told everybody that had came through Starbucks, at the Starbucks that I worked at, and everyone that I worked with, that it was going to be something that I did. I had no choice but to get a job at Starbucks because I had already put it out into the universe that it was going to happen. Message. No response. Hey, Chase, it's great to see you, great to meet you, but like, I can't help you get a job here. Or, I had to refigure out my approach. And what I realized was that I just need to reach out from a more personal perspective. Hey, my name is Chase Coleman. I'm a senior at Stetson University. I would love to have a conversation with you just to understand what it's like to work at Starbucks. What do you do? I frankly am very green in terms of like corporate roles. Can you help me understand a little bit more? Do you have 15 minutes to have a coffee chat with me? And I would just love to pick your brain a little bit. Those 15-minute conversations turned into 30 minutes. And then those 30 minutes turned into an hour sometimes. And then it turned into a relationship that I had with somebody internally. I ended up meeting Bernard Acoca, who was the president of Tivana within Starbucks, and now he's the CEO of El Pollo Loco. And I was just shooting everybody and anybody a message. Like, I didn't care if you were an SVP, I didn't care if you were a manager, I didn't care if you were an analyst, I didn't care if you were a barista at that point. I was just trying to meet other people. And he literally was the reason that I got my job. So quick story for you. I know I've told a lot of stories here, but I went in, he referred me for a position on the Starbucks marketing team, on their holiday team. I moved through the first round of interviews, ended up getting invited to the final interviews in Seattle. I went out to Seattle, 8 hours of interviews, 8 different people, all different aspects of the business. And at this point, I'm like, I'm killing it. Second to last interview, Bernard comes into the interview room and says, I'm going to steal you. These interviews are done. You're coming with me. And I was like,
during the interview, he says this.
During the interview, right? With a director level person, the hiring manager of this position. And I'm like, shit, Nancy, I got to go. Like, and she was like, yeah, you got to go. Like, he's caught, like, great job. It was great meeting you. Gives me a hug. Bye. I go into Bernard's office and he goes, I'm just letting you know this now that you went through the formal interview loop and I'm going to be hiring you. You should have an offer by the end of next week. Negotiate the salary if you want, but I'm excited that you're going to be working for me. And I was like, I'm going to be working for who? He's like, me. He's like, you won't be reporting directly to me, but I have a place on my team. I opened up a new role just for you. You probably would have got that position, but I want you on my team. I was like, bet.
Wow.
Bet. We ended up spending an hour talking. I was very late to the airport, almost missed my flight, did not care at the time. And then, in February of 2016, 3 months before I graduated, February, March, April, May, 4 months before I graduated, I had a job offer in hand from Starbucks, signed, sealed, and delivered to go work in the corporate office with a relocation package moving me out to Seattle, which made me realize it's all about networking. And that's how I've gotten every other position, you know, whether it's cold messages on LinkedIn, whether it's talking to people at Starbucks at the time and saying,
Wow.
when I would just network with people, like I would even ask them, like, is there somebody else that you think I should talk to that like might be able to help me, or that you think we would just be a good connection? And they would refer me to people internally, people externally. And I got to know people at Amazon, got to know people at Nestle, got to know people at Nordstrom. And, you know, I'm going to say this in the most humble way that I possibly can, but I, a regular application process and interview loop I haven't gone through in a while outside of Amazon. Amazon's just sticklers for that. But I was super prepared because I knew people internally and they were helping me figure out, what's your story? How are you going to talk to, you know, X, Y, and Z experience? Like at Amazon, we use the STAR method, the situation, task, action, results. Like practice that, Chase, practice that, right? So they gave me key things to help me stand out above the rest of the interview pool. And I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for my network.
Wow. Man, that's powerful. That's powerful. Okay. One last question for you, and I'll let you
Let's do
go.
it.
What's one rule or law that you live by?
The sun will set and the sun will rise. And I say that meaning that no matter what situation I go through, no matter what experience I go through, right? Whether it's the potential of losing my job, whether it's hearing that Amazon is laying off 10,000 more workers and that my direct business unit is going to be affected, a fight with my parents, a fight with my brother and sister, a fight with my girlfriend, things will always rectify themselves. And I mean that in a way where it's like, I obviously have to put in time and effort to rectify that. But just because I'm feeling down on myself or just because I'm feeling happy in the current moment doesn't mean that's how I'm going to feel tomorrow, right? Tomorrow's a brand new day. There's always going to be situations that are going to fluster you, stress you out, excite you, make you feel optimistic, make you go through a roller coaster of emotions. But at the end of the day, I'm always going to go to bed at night. I'm going to say my prayer, and then I'm going to wake up the next morning and it's going to be a brand new day. And I get to attack it the way that I want to attack it. And that's really the law that I like to live by. And the thing that I always tell myself is because, you know, as a generally anxious person, and I say generally, I mean, every day I'm always overthinking and I'm always very anxious. It's easy to get stuck in the rut of this sucks. Tomorrow's going to suck. This week sucks. Everything about this sucks. Right. But if I control what I can control and let the rest fall where it may, I tell every recruiter this. I'm like, I put my all in for those interviews and let the chips fall where they may. Well, how are you feeling about it? I feel great, but that doesn't matter. You guys are ultimately going to make the decision, and I'm going to be the one who's receiving that decision, right? I get to control how I react to it. I don't get to control the output or what you guys decide on, but I could either take it as, okay, I got this position. Awesome. Now I get to think about, do I want the position really or not? Do I go back and negotiate or not? Or you guys made that decision easy for me and told me that I didn't get it. Now I don't even have to think about it. Now I just have to move on from it. My basketball coach in high school, I mentioned high school basketball. We were the number 3 rated team in the country for a long time. We were number 1 at one point, and we won a lot of games, a whole lot of games. But my coach my coach and my father always said, you get 24 hours to celebrate and then you are done. You are done. But that also means when you lose, you get 24 hours to sulk and then you're done. Because it's not about the result. It's not about the output. It's what are you going to do about the output, right? I was just featured in Business Insider. Awesome. That all came off of a LinkedIn post that I made that got 23 likes. The lowest amount of likes I've ever gotten on a LinkedIn post is the reason that I was featured in freaking Business Insider. But it's awesome. I took that 24 hours to celebrate. I was excited. I was super pumped about it. But now what am I doing about it? Well, now I'm going to start a newsletter. Now I'm going to engage my audience in a different way. I just put out a poll asking people on LinkedIn, what do you want to see from me? Is it content creation? Is it side hustles and working a 9 to 5? Is it life of a content creator? What is it? What do you want to see? Now I get to build upon that. And I'm really excited to, because there were times in my life where I've allowed the celebration to go on too long, where I've allowed the sulking to go on too long. And then all of a sudden things become irrelevant. That Business Insider post was great a week ago. If I didn't build on that immediately, nobody is going to go back and look at that. Nobody's going to go back and care about it, because that is old news, Chase. Oh, cool. You did it. Old news. Old news. I had to build on it in real time. And I've taken that. I'm building on it. I could get 5 people to subscribe to my newsletter, but that's 5 more people than I would have had before the article. So sun rises, sun sets every day. The next day is always a new day. And it's really based on how I react to things. It's not based on how much I can control. So that's the 1 or 7 things that I constantly live my life by, because at the end of the day, I want to die happy. And that doesn't mean I'm going to be a wealthy man. That doesn't mean I'm going to be the best person on earth, but I want to always like stay true to myself. And part of that is recognizing and realizing that the only way I could be my best self is by understanding and realizing every new situation, every new experience is an opportunity to build and grow, but I don't have to get the highs are never too high and the lows are never too low, because you always know that there's something else that's coming up.
Chase, my man, thank you so much.
This was fun, man.
This was great.
This was so much fun. I really appreciate you for bringing me on. For everybody listening, thank you so much for hearing me and my crazy ass stories. I've lived a wild life, but it's all a journey. And at the end of the day, the last thing I'll say, CJ, is like, life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. We all start at different places. Some people start 10 steps ahead of you. Some people start 10 steps behind you, and some people fall a couple steps in front. Some people fall a couple steps behind. Some people start at the same exact place. Do not compare yourselves to others. I could compare myself to other corporate content creators and realize like, oh, I only have, 90,000 followers across both platforms. They have that, on one platform. That's half of their following or whatever it may be. And it could stop me from creating content. It's not about that. It's about your own life, your own journey, how you take everything into account and how you really truly build upon it. And I just want others to know that, like, at the end of the day, like, they'll always have a supporter in me as long as they're a nice person. If you come into my comments talking shit, I'm not going to support you. But run your own race. Run your own race. It'll help you mentally too.
That's awesome. You can find Chase everywhere. I'll put it in the show notes where people can find you and find links to the conference as well. All right,
I appreciate
man. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.